Okay. Good morning, Minister, Deputy Ministers, honorable members, and everybody in the platform.
Morning, Honorable Mkiza.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members, and colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Makasi. Good morning.
Molo Sal.
Molo is Honorable Pitch. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Morning, colleagues. Good to be on the platform.
I just want to check if Peters is here. I don't see her.
He hasn't joined yet, Chair.
Okay. I think we need to start with our meeting, honorable members and colleagues. It's 9:30. You will have to pardon me. There's a noise in my background. I think they are cutting the grass or something here. Honorable members, at the start of our term, we focused on the severe health burden of fossil fuel air pollution, particularly within the high-felt priority areas. Achieving air quality improvement requires robust law enforcement and the right enabling tools. However, our quarterly briefings reveal that while an ambient air quality monitoring network exists, it is inadequate and failing to function properly. The network is a fragmented system split across national, provincial, and local government levels, as well as industry-operated stations. Instead of serving as our first line of defense for public health and regulatory compliance, it faces a crisis of effectiveness. Many provincial monitoring stations are merely decorative, failing to meet data requirements or remaining completely offline. Worryingly, some provinces have more non-compliant stations than can I just pause a bit and request this person who is in front of my house to stop what he is doing, please?
Let me do that. Continuing. I'm saying let me do that when I continue with the meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Honorable Makasi. I'm sorry for that, honorable members. I was saying, honorable members and colleagues, worryingly, some provinces have more non-compliant stations than functional ones, leaving South African Air Quality Information System unreliable due to severe data shortages. In contrast, stations operated by the South African Weather Services reliable demonstrate greater functionality and performance than those managed by the department, strongly supporting the transfer of government-owned stations to its management. This meeting is convened to detail the practicalities, funding, and benefits of this proposed transition. Through our oversight work, we require clear answers on how South African Weather Services and the FFE will address systemic issues like aging infrastructure, poor maintenance, capacity constraints, vandalism, theft, and power interruptions. We must also understand the exact nature of the financial and technical support needed to enable SOURCE to deliver on this expanded mandate. Our ultimate objective is to ensure that this management change results in a resilient, transparent, and highly functional monitoring system that serves all South Africans. With those few words, honorable members and colleagues, I welcome all of you in the meeting. Chilega, can you flight our agenda? Am I audible? Okay.
We are audible, Chair.
Chilega,
So
what
can
is
you
up?
see my screen?
No, we see a lot of things, files.
I
And
know.
we don't see you the agenda.
I did it. Let me try again. Share. Oh my.
Chilega, yes, sabotage. Yes,
Chair,
sabotage.
I'm on it on my side.
Is it only me who can't see the agenda, honorable members?
No, we can't see the agenda. We saw the screen, but it's the main
Yeah.
screen of the computer.
Yes, Minister. Okay. Nkandla, are you able to assist Chilega to flight?
Let me try again, Chair. I don't know
Yeah,
why
thank
it's
you.
showing.
There
Yeah,
we go. There we go,
yeah.
Sheila.
Here we go. Thank you, Chi. Here is our agenda. We do not have a long agenda, honorable members. Can we then zoom into apologies, Chi?
Yes, Chair, we have 3 apologies. The first one is from Honorable Paul Singh. He's attending a PC on energy meeting this morning, Chair. And the second apology is from Minister. He has requested to be excused at 10 because he has to attend to a prior arrangement. And the third apology, Chair, is from Team National Treasury. They were supposed to be presenting to us, Chair, this morning. However, they are presenting to Parliament on the General Laws Amendment Bill. So they requested to come on the 25th. Those are the apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Chi.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Mkiza.
Yes, I would like to send apology from Honorable Temba. He said he can't connect because he's taking a flight right now.
Oh, okay, noted.
So,
Noted. Thank you, Honorable Mkiza. I don't see any other hand. Can we then move for the adoption of the agenda? Can I get a mover for the adoption of the agenda? Honorable Kate Bilangulo.
Thank you very much, Chair. I move for the adoption of the agenda and the apologies. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bilangulo. Honorable Managa.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I raised my hand to second the mover and also the apologies. With apologies in future, they should be sent via your office or or Tilega's office. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Managa. That one is, is noted. Chi, can you quickly go through the list of the delegation?
Yes, Chair. Today's delegation is as follows. We have Minister Ocamp, Deputy Minister Swartz, Deputy Minister Singh, Director General Ms. Nomfundo Shabalala, Dr. Patient Gwaze, she's the Acting Deputy Director on Climate Change and Equality, and then Mr. Thabo Sichedi. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. He's the Director for Atmospheric Quality Information. Mr. Walters, he's the Director for Enforcement, Environmental Impact and Pollution. And then Chair from the South African Weather Service, we have the board chairperson, Ms. Sandika Daya, the acting CEO, Dr. Jonas Mpepia, acting Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Tukulu Mojapelo, The Executive for Corporate Services is Ms. Petro Deke. The Acting Executive for Infrastructure and Information Systems, we have Ms. Lebohang Mahati. The Specialist for Strategy Planning and Reporting is Mr. Ituso Muhapi. That is the delegation chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Before I move to the Minister for his overview, there's a gadget of Lerato. That one is unmuted. Lerato, can you mute or we'll have to remove you from the platform? The second one is Nhlanhla Mjikayo, PMG. Your gadget is unmuted. Can you mute? Can you mute your gadget, Nhlanhla Mjikayo, PMG? Thank you. Please, colleagues, can you watch your gadgets? Otherwise, we'll be forced to remove you. We can't allow people to disturb our meeting. Minister Ocamp, over to you to do overview.
Good morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much. I sincerely hope that that leaf blower that made the noise outside of your house is not detrimental to the air quality. Honourable Chairperson, honourable members, deputy ministers that's on the platform, the DG, senior officials, good morning. Chairperson, in terms of Section 24 of the Constitution, government is entrusted with the responsibility to ensure that all South Africans breathe air that is not harmful to their health and well-being. And to give effect to this mandate, air quality monitoring stations have been established across all spheres of government, from the national department to provincial administrations, as well as local municipalities. And currently, South Africa has approximately 135 fully automated air quality monitoring stations, forming part of the National Ambient Air Quality Monitoring Network. These stations are strategically located in densely populated areas to measure human exposure to air pollution, and they are based on internationally recognized reference monitoring techniques as prescribed under Section 9 of the Act. Now, notwithstanding this progress, the country continues to face significant challenges in meeting our air quality monitoring requirements. At present, only about 1/3 of the 136 government-owned monitoring stations are fully operational, and this creates substantial gaps in the data required to assess compliance with ambient air quality standards and to inform targeted interventions. The high cost of establishing a single monitoring station is estimated at up to 3 million rands, depending on the instrumentation that's used there. And this places a considerable pressure on both capital as well as operational budgets across all spheres of government. These ongoing challenges with the management and maintenance of the monitoring infrastructure undermines our ability to track pollution levels accurately, as well as to predict pollution episodes and to implement evidence-based air quality management interventions. Now, this current state further weakens regulatory enforcement and it limits the protection of the public health. Several interrelated factors also contribute to these challenges. Firstly, fiscal constraints are exacerbated by the current economic climate and have limited the ability of government to maintain, to upgrade, and to expand the monitoring network. Secondly, exchange rate fluctuations continue to escalate the cost of imported equipment and maintenance, further constraining provincial as well as municipal capacity. And in addition to that, much of the existing infrastructure is aging and increasingly unreliable. So it poses a lot of challenges to us. Frequent operational interruptions, often linked to inconsistent power supply, reduce data availability, and compromise the reliability. And we've got to look at alternative forms to overcome that problem. Then, Chairperson, theft and vandalism of monitoring equipment further exacerbate these challenges. Equally important is the constraint in technical capacity. Many provincial and local authorities lack the specialized expertise required to operate and maintain these complex monitoring systems. This has obviously resulted in inefficiencies and fragmentation across the air quality management sector, with inconsistent data that's collected and limited integration across regions. In response, the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment has taken decisive steps to strengthen the country's air quality monitoring capabilities through a number of initiatives. Firstly, these initiatives are that the DFFE and South African Weather Services has established a proposal for the entity to operate, manage, and maintain a list of strategic air monitoring stations on behalf of the provincial and municipal governments. Only the strategic stations have been considered, as some provinces and municipalities are now putting in place interventions to improve the management of their stations. And this intervention requires that the DFFE continues to engage with National Treasury in order to engage funding operations and options, as well as approaches for this program going forward. Secondly, we have entered into a strategic partnership with the Clean Air Fund to implement a low-cost sensor monitoring program. Phase 1 of this program is already underway and targets the deployment of 200 sensors across Gauteng, including the cities of Johannesburg, Tshwane, and Ekurhuleni, as well as Sedibeng, the West Rand, and the Northern Free State. There are plans to expand this program to the Northern Free State to augment monitoring in the province, as well as at the Bojanala Platinum District Municipality. We are working closely with donor funders to expand the deployment of low-cost sensors in areas where monitoring stations are currently non-operational or not available at all. Now, these interventions will significantly enhance national coverage, particularly in underserved and high-risk communities. Thirdly, in parallel, the DFFE is finalizing the procurement of an additional 20 low-cost sensor units for deployment across Limpopo, KZN, Free State, Mpumalanga, the Northern Cape, Northwest, Eastern Cape, and Western Cape provinces. It should be particularly noted that all the data generated through these initiatives will be fully integrated into the South African Air Quality Information System, ensuring transparency, public accessibility, and improved decision-making across all spheres of government. Chairperson, these interventions represent a pragmatic and cost-effective approach to strengthening our air quality and the monitoring of that and our monitoring of our networks, whilst also addressing existing constraints. They also reaffirm government's commitment to evidence-based environmental governance and the protection of public health. I look forward to engage with the committee on this and to hear what they've got to say, so that we can collectively make sure that everything that we do in this regard is to the benefit of the people and their health. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister, for your overview remarks. I want to check with DMs whether they would like to say something or they've been covered by the Minister. Honourable Singh and Honourable Swartz.
I will use this opportunity to greet you, Honourable Chair, and wish you speedy recovery, and greet all the honourable members and everybody else, our departmental staff. And no, I have nothing to say. The Minister has spoken. Thank you very much. Good morning,
Thank
Minister.
you. Thank you, Honourable DM.
Good morning, DM.
DM Swartz.
Good morning, Honourable Chair, Honourable Minister, DM Singh, and honourable members and officials.
You are muted, Honourable Swartz. DM Swartz, you are muted.
Chairperson, if I may come in, we had a meeting previously this morning with DM Swartz, and she had some difficulties with signal and reception there. I don't know, it might be the same situation now.
Oh, no, thank you for the heads up, Honourable Minister. I think let's then move.
Person, Honourable Minister, and DM Singh, I said you may proceed.
Oh, thank you.
Can you hear me now, Chairperson?
Yes, we can hear you now, DM Swartz. Thank you. Thank you.
I was saying good morning, Honorable Chairperson, Minister DM Singh, and honorable members and officials. You may proceed, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mama. Thank you. We've heard you. I will then move to the department. Just want to check who's leading the department.
The DG Chair.
Yes, Miss Nomfundo Shabalala DG, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to yourself. Good morning to the Minister, Minister Okamp, Deputy Minister Swartz, Deputy Minister Singh. Good morning to the honorable members and colleagues that are on the line, also the Chairperson of the Source Board and the acting CE. Chairperson, we do have a presentation. The acting DDG of climate change will take the committee through the presentation, which we have prepared. What I want to highlight, Chair, is to acknowledge your opening remarks and also acknowledge the input that Minister has made, which outline the challenges that are faced by the department in managing and monitoring some of our air quality monitoring network support. And as a result, we have then looked at this initiative of the entity source assisting us on those strategic monitoring networks, taking them over. However, this chair will be dependent on funding that we are currently facilitating, which National Treasury has requested that we must put together a detailed business case in relation to this. So I am going to hand over to the acting DDG. Our DDG for climate change is currently abroad. So Dr. Gwaze is acting, and she is going to take the committee through the details of this presentation. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, DG. Over to you, Dr. Kwaza.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister and the Deputy Ministers, the DG, Acting CEO and the source colleagues. I will take you through the presentation that we have prepared on the interventions that we are proposing. I acknowledge the inputs that you have provided, Chair, at the beginning of this session and highlighting some of the benefits that we will retrieve from this intervention if the Weather Service is to be supported and funded in undertaking this intervention at a strategic level. Next slide. I will take you through the presentation on the potential for the Weather Service to support government in air quality monitoring programs through the management of strategic stations. But we've also added, beyond the management of strategic stations, a component around the integrated national air quality forecasting and modeling to enhance the country's capacity to monitor and predict air quality, noting that even the inclusion of the strategic stations does not cover the entire country and further interventions are needed. I will then provide an overview on some of the government interventions that we are implementing that the Minister has highlighted through the introduction of low-cost sensors to fill in the gaps on some of the areas where we are facing challenges with monitoring. All these initiatives are intended to address the critical gaps in availability of data, of information that needs to be disseminated and provided to the public as their rights to access to information on air quality. Next slide. As you have indicated, Chair, and as the Minister has indicated, government is mandated to provide air quality monitoring to understand the state of air quality in the Republic, as well as to assess the impact of air quality and the protection and for the protection of human health. We do this through the provision of air quality monitoring stations in terms of the air quality legislation. And the provision for air quality monitoring station is intended to achieve two main objectives: to assess and report on the state of air that the citizens are exposed to, as well as to use this information as a yardstick to measure the efficacy of our policies, our interventions, as a tool for evidence-based making for decision making, and also to support air quality research activities. Next slide. South Africa has invested significantly in the infrastructure for air quality monitoring. And some of these investments go back to the early 2000s to meet the regulatory requirements. Equipment has been procured by the National Department that was transferred to the South African Weather Service. Provinces and municipalities have also done the same. And this investment has come at a significant cost that our estimate looks at over $500 million that has been invested by government. If you look at the location of these monitoring stations across the country, you will see that they follow or mimic the distribution of population. So where there is significant population in Mpumalanga, in Gauteng, on the coastal areas where we've got the coastal cities of Cape Town and others, including eThekwini and Richards Bay, you do have significant monitoring across those areas. There's space monitoring across Free State, across Northern Cape, and part of the fringes of Limpopo and Mpumalanga as well. Noting the challenges on covering the rest of the country, we have partnered with private network owners, and this include Eskom, Sasol, include the Richards Bay, Clean Air Kuga. These entities, while they are private, they are also providing information to our South African Air Quality Information System to complement what the investment that government has made. Our information can be accessed through the South African Air Quality Information System website, which we are exceptionally proud of, and an app that can be accessed by the public and you can download freely. This information, Chair, is not only used for decision making. We have found that a lot of students in the country, a lot of researchers are accessing this information and using it to inform public awareness in terms of air quality. Young school-going children use this information. It's readily and freely available. And this information system has been in existence since 2010. Next slide. A typical air quality monitoring station looks like what we have seen on the screen, where we have got the station. Our station hosts the equipment inside the station, and the station itself is made of special material that must maintain temperature inside the station because our equipment is very sensitive. The equipment is also requires that we secure our assets to avoid vandalism that we have experienced over the years. Inside the shelter, we have a controlled temperature device, normally that we provide, and every monitoring station must have an air conditioner because the temperature inside must be maintained. We also provide additional power, and due to the fluctuation in power supply, we've added UPS systems, we have added power backup systems that also then provide a risk for us to have this equipment being vandalized. Inside the shelter, you have the instruments that monitor the pollution. Those are the instruments that you see in the container, and each of these instruments costs between possibly 200 and R1 million plus. So these are exceptionally expensive equipment that we procure, and in almost always internationally procured at a foreign currency rate. We have the inlets and the workstation that is used by the technicians when they visit the station. This is really a typical example from the Lepalale station that is managed by the South African Weather Service. Next slide. You have listed a number of challenges. The DG has listed some of the challenges, and so has the minister. We have interventions that we are putting in place to address some of these challenges. For example, one of the challenges that we have continued to face was our ability to procure equipment quickly, particularly when there's breakdowns, and to fill in the gaps to reduce data loss. We have had the National Treasury put in a transversal contract for us to assist us with the procurement and the services that are required to manage these monitoring stations. In terms of matters of vandalism, we are moving most of these stations that are under threat to the South African Police Service stations because there we have sufficient security that can be provided. Actually, the previous slide that I've just shown you is a monitoring station that is at the police station in Lephalale. We recognize the challenges in recapitalization because of the cost. Interventions are underway by the network owners. However, we acknowledge that these interventions are not enough to meet the growing needs of the aging infrastructure, as well as the need to ensure that this equipment is maintained effectively and successfully. So I have to also indicate that the capacity requirements to maintain this infrastructure requires that in almost all of the cases, we use external service providers to manage our infrastructure as a country. In some areas, we are then introducing low-cost sensors to address some of the challenges in infrastructure. Next slide. In terms of the first intervention that we have spoken to, this is the intervention where we are bringing in, or we are proposing that the Weather Service be supported to assist government in managing air quality monitoring stations. The Weather Service has been managing monitoring stations for a long time. Since 2010, we have handed over in phases the priority area of the the Val Triangle monitoring station in 2010. In 2012, we handed over the Highveld priority area monitoring network, and in 2015, we handed over the Waterberg-Bujalana monitoring network, bringing a total of 15 monitoring stations that the Weather Service has been managing since then. The support that is provided to manage these monitoring stations was through an MOU between the department and the Weather Service until 2024, where we then converted this MOU to a memorandum of agreement that we are now using as a tool to support this intervention. In terms of extending this intervention to the rest of the country, we are proposing a three-phased approach. We have engaged on this approach with provinces. We have presented this approach to Mintech for support, and this is the proposal that we are then presenting to you. Within this mechanism, we are looking at the Weather Service assisting government through a three-phased approach to manage the monitoring stations. We have to identify strategic stations within the province. We have to identify those stations that are non-operational, and also in areas where there is space monitoring, so that we not only assist in managing strategic stations, but we also fill in the gaps in the monitoring exercise that the Weather Service can intervene. And within each phase, we are then looking at a structure where the Weather Service can use their existing infrastructure to establish regional labs across the country to support the monitoring initiative. Because with each monitoring network, you need to establish a lab for calibration. You need to establish a lab that will assist with the maintenance of the infrastructure. And you can't just move equipment back and forth to Pretoria. You need to use the existing infrastructure that the Weather Service already has. Next slide. This three-phased approach looks like what we have in this slide. In the first phase, we have identified up to 26 stations within Mpumalanga, Northwest, Gauteng, Limpopo, and Free State. Those monitoring stations will then use the IRIN lab to support the Weather Service intervention on the identified stations. The second phase will be to establish a lab within the KZN area so that KwaZulu-Natal and Eastern Cape monitoring stations of up to 20 stations are supported by that regional lab from the South African Weather Service. And the last phase would then be up to 14 stations in the Western Cape and Northern Cape to be supported, and other stations to be supported through a lab that the Weather Service will then establish around the Cape Town area. Ultimately, the Weather Service would then have up to 60 stations that they are managing, and up and above the 17 that they already have. Next slide. We are mimicking the approach that the Weather Service is currently using in the support that they are providing to the priority area monitoring stations and extending that to the rest of the country. So the Weather Service requires resources that includes the station operation and maintenance, that will cover station operation and maintenance costs, the infrastructure that we are looking at, the consumables that will be required, the calibration, provision of security, the issues of data transfer from the monitoring stations to the South African Air Quality Information System, and we have estimated a cost of around 270,000 that is required just for the maintenance for the monitoring station. We need to consider that in some of the stations that the Weather Service might be taking, these stations will be having equipment that is either aged or is no longer usable. And they will need to put in place an equipment recapitalization plan that will replace those aging analyzers or those analyzers that are failing to operate. And we're looking at a cost of between 300,000 to close to $1 million. If the Weather Service is to undertake this work within those regional centers, while the infrastructure exists for the purpose of hosting the labs, we will also need to then bring in equipment for air quality monitoring that is currently not in place, such as calibration equipment, laboratory equipment. We need to purchase vehicles for the Weather Service to use to visit those monitoring stations. We need to have the office space catered for, and we have looked at a cost of nearly 5 million initial cost, and this cost may be varied so that the centers could be built over time, and so we can prioritize the needs of each center. And the most ultimate and critical element is the human elements to drive this work. And we have put in this proposal the human resources that are required for the purpose of the managing the stations, managing the reference, the regional centers, as well as collecting the data, managing the data, generating reports, and disseminating the reports to the communities and to the government spheres that they are managing. Next slide. The second component on this work is to recognize that having the Weather Service manage those at 6 stations at the country level might not be sufficient for us. We need to look at the best practice that currently exists globally in providing information to the public beyond the physical monitoring stations. And we want to extend source intervention to integrated modeling and forecasting. What that entails is that up and above the monitoring stations that the Weather Service can be putting in place, we're still missing areas that do not have sufficient monitoring. And we need to cover those other areas because the monitoring stations we have are not sufficient for the rest of the country. And that's where we are bringing in what we call in the integrated atmospheric composition modeling system. In short, it's just an air quality modeling and forecasting system. The Weather Service is already implementing that for weather services. And so we are extending that approach that they're using for weather services and providing information to the public to air quality modeling and forecasting so that they also provide when they are doing, for example, weather forecasting, they can then also provide the forecasting of air quality. Next slide. This infrastructure looks at three elements. Developing the integrated system. We need to identify the sources of pollution across the country, and the Weather Services are experts of that. Understanding how we develop the chemical and data simulation system, looking at machine learning, getting the data sets in place, looking at air quality in areas where there are no stations, and using this information as a policy tool to support not only our existing monitoring stations, but to fill in the gaps, provide information for additional analysis of our ability to improve air quality, for our ability to put in interventions that improve air quality, and to also understand the cost benefits of air quality monitoring and interventions. This infrastructure will be integrated within the original air quality monitoring network because the monitoring network for the ground observations are required for this modeling system to be effective. The Weather Service is mandated by the legislation to provide these services for the country for decision making and to assist the communities in understanding the quality of air that they are breathing, as well as in making decisions in terms of issues such as where can people live? What is the quality of air? What can I do in the next 2-3 days if the air quality is poor? Next slide. The Weather Service has done work of similar nature. I'm just giving you an example of the work that the Weather Service has done with the Medical Research Council in the burden of diseases study that they undertook, where the Weather Service has been able to model the quality of air across the Republic. And the slide on your left shows you the average particulate matter of what we call PM 2.5, and the Weather Service has been able to simulate the quality of air across the Republic and give us an output that shows us where the hotspots are Gauteng, the metros, Durban, and on the top left corner, you also see the impact of the Namib Desert in influencing the quality of air in the Republic. So this kind of intervention fills in the gaps where we don't have monitoring. It's complemented by air quality monitoring. It provides national coverage, and it's much more effective for us for decision making. On the left side is another, on the right side is an image of a similar simulation when we are looking at pollutant that we call ozone. Next slide. What is required for the Weather Service to be able to undertake this work effectively? The implementation of this modeling and integrated system presents exciting opportunities for the country. Exceptionally exciting opportunities. However, it requires that we put in the resources. It will enable us to transition from the space monitoring that we currently have to a comprehensive national coverage. It will provide for us data quality and reliable data information that we can use for multiple sources. It will provide for the spatial distribution in areas that we don't have and improved temporal resolution so we can ask the Weather Service, what is the state of air tomorrow? You can't get that from the monitoring stations. You can get that from the air quality forecasting. It can also provide better support for evidence-based decision-making in air quality management. These systems will enable us to develop early warning systems and issue public alerts where necessary so that we can significantly improve our ability to provide information to the public for the purpose of human health protection. Next slide. The requirements that we have presented to you from the Weather Service require significant investment. To enable the integrated system, investments are required both at a technical level and at a human resource level. This requires that we need to have the supercomputing facilities for complex modeling. This requires significant capacity for modeling because they are simulating mathematical models to give us the ability to predict the quality of air. It requires high capacity servers for data processing and storage. Not only should they be simulating, they should also be able to disseminate this information. It requires robust data exchange network for real-time information if they're going to be disseminating this information even to the South African Air Quality Information System or to any other platform. And it requires specialized software for the Weather Service to undertake this modeling and the data analysis that accompanies this work. Up and above this, these kind of activities are so specialized that we need senior technical specialists that are available to lead in the research and development of those kind of services. And we need to put in place with this kind of activities a capacity building program that brings in universities, master's students, bring PhD students, even undergraduates and postgraduate researchers to assist a sustainably infrastructure and credible modeling system that the Weather Service can use to dissemination information to the public for decision making. Next slide. The costs that are required, we present to you on this. We have presented a 10-year proposal to say if we are to undertake this work effectively, what will be required for the Weather Service to undertake this work. We have looked at the total cost in terms of investment for infrastructure as well as operational cost, the CAPEX and the OPEX for the monitoring stations. We've looked at the costs that are required for the regional centers, including the capital investment. We have looked at the air quality modeling and forecasting, the personnel, the infrastructure, and the total human capacity that are required both for modeling and for forecasting. And the costs that we're presenting to you here are the proposed costs that we have come up with in our engagements with the Weather Service. And we will be engaging with the National Treasury to understand how such interventions can be funded. We are also looking at some of the options for donor funding where it's possible to start the work going. Next slide. In other interventions, while we recognize that the Weather Service is at the center of the interventions that we need to put in place. We also recognize that as government, there are some interventions that we need to consider within the resources that we have. I've shown you on the previous slide a typical traditional air quality monitoring station. We are introducing what we are calling low-cost sensor monitors. These are very small devices, and you can see from the scale that can be put either at a electric power pole station, at a bus stop, or any other area to monitor air quality. These devices are compact. They contain all the monitoring within a very small device. They are cheaper. They don't have the same level of accuracy as the traditional monitoring station, but they can provide a reasonable information that can be used for decision making in cases where we don't have ambient air quality monitoring. Next slide. The low-cost sensors are a new technology that is gaining popularity globally. They are portable, compact equipment that can be deployed in practical timeframes, very quickly deployed, and can quickly and speedily supplement our national air quality monitoring network across the country. They provide information in real time at significantly lower cost, and they are also cheap to commission. They are easy to operate. No skilled labor is required, either for the management of the station of the sensor or for calibration, and they can be operated by very limited human intervention or human capacity is required. They are so small and they do not really contain any attractive elements that can call for vandalism, so they can easily be secured within any location that can be identified. And what's also important is that in those areas where we don't have the grid available, they can also be powered by solar and reducing the challenges for electricity. They are also very versatile. These are equipments that are compact, that they contain all, you can measure all the pollutants that we have defined as a country as our criteria pollutants, our sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen, particulate matter, volatile organic compounds or carbon monoxide, as well as meteorological parameters. It's really a matter of what you are requiring when you are procuring those kind of sensors. And they've got a plug and play mechanism where you can buy in additional pollutants that you would want or remove those pollutants that you would not want to have. So they are a cheap alternative that we can consider to use in the monitoring stations. And Minister has highlighted some of the interventions that we are putting in place with the fund and donor support. Next slide. A number of provinces and municipalities are already implementing this kind of interventions. And on this list, I'm just showing you some of the already existing infrastructure that the different provinces have put and other spheres of government have put in place. We currently have about 31 sensors on the ground, and 26 of these are active, but 8 are reporting to the South African Air Quality Information System. We are still configuring the ability of all the sensors to report because each manufacturer presents a different mechanism for us to connect to our air quality information system service. Next slide. As a department, we have approached donors to look at funding, and we've just finished a procurement of over 200 sensors that we put in place, as the minister has highlighted. We have also approached the donor for an additional 100 sensors that we are going to distribute across the country, as well as indicated on the slide. And we are looking at this work within this current financial year into the foreseeable future. As the department, we are finalizing the procurement of 20 sensors. Why are we procuring on 20 sensors? The sensor that we are using as the department, we are using the commercial grade sensor that can monitor a whole range of pollutants, and that's why we have got 20 sensors to be procured. They are significantly more expensive than what the donor has provided us, but it provides us with the ability to have multiple facility in terms of the sensors that we can procure. We also have a plan to procure more sensors down the road, and provinces have committed within the current financial year, either at province or at municipal level, around 20 sensors in total. So over the past 3 years or so, we have been able to procure a significantly large number of sensors and commission in areas where there's limited monitoring, with the understanding that we are filling in the gaps where the monitoring is sparse, and we are extending this work. And at the end of this year, I think we'll be deploying some of the sensors. At the end of this month, we'll be deploying some of the sensors in Mpumalanga. Next slide. The low-cost sensors are reporting to the South African Air Quality Information System. We are also developing the quality systems, and this is important to the scientific community to say, if you are now looking at low-cost sensors, what is the value? How credible are these sensors compared to reference monitoring? Are you then substituting with the cheaper equipment so that you degrade the quality of our information? That is not the case. We are putting a quality system with the work of the Weather Service so that we test the sensors that we are commissioning to ensure that when we test them against our own traditional monitoring stations, we have the surety of how these sensors perform. We are engaging with South African Bureau of Standards to also establish the guiding principles on how the sensors can be used going forward. And with the sensors that we have procured with the funder, we have been training stakeholders, particularly the municipalities, on the commissioning of these sensors, as well as data dissemination and reporting from the sensors that we have procured. Next slide. So in conclusion, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we recognize the challenges in air quality monitoring. We also recognize the cost and challenges that are presented to government, particularly in this current financial status. We recognize that multiple interventions are required, and these interventions require resources. However, the interventions that we are putting in place, particularly for the South African Weather Service, provide a cost-effective and sustainable approach to manage strategically our air quality monitoring infrastructure, reduce our dependence on service providers, put in a coordinated infrastructure across the country. However, this requires that our partnership that we have with the Weather Service is re-looked at to bring in the resources that are required for the Weather Service to build the necessary capacity to undertake these activities. It not only requires the capacity in terms of human resources, it also requires capacity in terms of infrastructure and governance of such a network. It requires a phased approach, noting that it has significant financial commitments. And the department is approaching National Treasury one more time for the support. However, we recognize that this is a cost-effective approach, and I will repeat, it's a sustainable approach because the Weather Service can build capacity that is long-term. This investment requires critical computational infrastructure. However, they will address the critical gaps that we are. And we have a view that such an infrastructure by the Weather Service and this work will not only put our entity on the map in terms of managing this infrastructure, but also developing further into a center of excellence, which is an entity that is supporting South African air quality monitoring, South African decision-making in air quality monitoring, in the same way they are supporting the weather information across the different spheres of government. And the department, provinces, and municipalities will continue to roll out low-cost sensor monitoring as we fill in the gaps in areas where we are missing monitoring across the country. Chair, this is my last slide. Thank you for your attention. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gwaze, for the presentation. Honorable members, that is the presentation. I am now going to note hands. I see the hand of Honorable Mkhize, followed by Honorable Bilangulu, Honorable Kumalo, then Honorable Mukwena, Honorable De Block, followed by Honorable Makasi, then Honorable Peters. We will be followed by Honorable Managa, in that order, honorable members. Honorable Mkhize.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Greetings to deputy ministers and portfolio committee members and everyone present. Honorable Chairperson, while the presentation outlined ambitious plans for expanded monitoring and forecasting, however, it raises serious concerns regarding funding certainty and the poor state existing infrastructure and the absence of clear accountability for previous failures. um, concerning the funding and sustainability. Chairperson, my first question is the presentation that states that the proposed South African Weather Services intervention will require approximately 625.6 million over 10 years. Yet it also admits that resources are currently unavailable and that discussions with the National Treasury and potential donors are still required. What contingency plan does the FFE have if National Treasury does not approve the requested funding? And how will the department ensure that the proposed air quality monitoring expansion does not become another unfunded mandate that fails to deliver on its targets? My second question, Chairperson. Government has already invested more than 500 million in 131 monitoring stations. Yet the presentation acknowledges persistent challenges such as vandalism, theft, non-operational stations, inadequate maintenance. Why should Parliament have confidence that the proposed South African Weather Services led model will succeed when previous interventions have struggled? The last question, Chairperson, what specific validation has been undertaken to ensure that low-cost sensors produce data of sufficient quality for regulatory and public health decision making? And by when will all operational sensors be fully integrated into South African Air Quality Information System and public accessible? Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhize. Honorable Khumalo.
Bilangolo.
Honorable Bilangolo.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning once more. Firstly, Chair, I would like to welcome the presentation. I've got few questions to ask, Chair. Beyond the 10 years projection, what mechanism ensures sustained funding for air quality monitoring infrastructure and operations? What is the true cost effectiveness of low-cost sensors, considering current reporting issues and ongoing configuration licensing efforts? What are the anticipated hidden operational costs for managing a national sensor network? For an example, the data management, the cybersecurity, and specialized training. What are the contingency plans if donor funding for low-cost sensors is not secured? Chairperson, how does the department ensure clear accountability between national, provincial, and municipal authorities for all the monitoring stations currently in operation? Given the estimated 625 million cost over 10 years, what concrete commitments has National Treasury made to fund the program? What is the long-term financial sustainability plan beyond donor funding and phased allocations? Why are some monitoring stations non-operational, and what timelines exist to restore full functionality? The last one, Chair. What measures are being implemented to address theft and vandalism of infrastructure beyond relocating stations? I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Bilangolo. Honorable Khumalo.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to your good self, Chair. Honorable ministers, honorable members of the committee, and our officials that are in the platform. Chair, let me also join honorable members who have welcomed and appreciated the presentation. I'm just having also questions that I want to ask to the presenters. One, how will public skepticism regarding the accuracy and reliability of low-cost sensor data be addressed? What mechanism will ensure compliance and data submission from all monitoring entities to a central system? What is the strategy to mitigate geopolitical and supply chain risk for sensor technology? What plans are in place for advanced analytics to derive actionable insights from the increased data volume? How will the department improve transparency and public access to real-time air quality data? How will the department ensure equitable air quality monitoring in underserved provinces such as Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and rural areas? What early warning systems are in place to protect communities from hazardous air quality episodes? How will this program directly improve health outcomes in pollution hotspots? Lastly, Chair, what are the clear timelines and milestones for each phase of the source intervention rollout? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Kumalo. Honorable Mokoena.
Thank you very much, Chair. Am I audible, Chair?
Yes, you are, Mama.
Okay, thank you. What ethical guidelines and data governance framework will address data ownership, access, and potential misuse? How can air quality monitoring be reimagined to be decentralized, citizen-driven, and predictive, moving beyond the limitation of current fixed infrastructure? If SOurce becomes the central custodian, what governance and funding models can ensure its independence and enable it to proactively address emerging air quality challenges? What technological or societal shifts are needed to make air quality better? And how can data reshape urban planning, industry, and public health to create regenerative environments? What consequences will follow if provinces or municipalities fail to meet implementation targets? Has a feasibility study been completed? And lastly, Chair, what regulatory amendments are necessary to facilitate the transfer? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mokoena. Honorable Diplock.
Thank you, Chairperson, and a good morning to you, the other members, the members of the executive that have joined us, as well as the officials. I'd like to join my colleagues in welcoming the presentations. And I want to echo the Chair's remarks in the opening of this meeting, where she said this has been a problem that has been omnipresent throughout our term as a committee in the 7th administration. This issue of data availability, failure because of power, these air quality stations that are being vandalized and stolen. So I am very happy to see that we are having some proactive problem solving on behalf of the department and SOurce. So I do want to welcome that attitude and coming to the party on this long-standing issue. It is a concern for me, Chair, and quite disappointing that the National Treasury are not with us. I know they tendered apologies, but it's very difficult for us as members of Parliament with oversight responsibilities to judge how likely it is that funding for this kind of a project would be under the fiscal constraints that we're experiencing without the National Treasury here to answer those kinds of questions. I noticed Honourable Mokoena also asked for a feasibility study, which would be typically something that the National Treasury would undertake. And I say it is a pity because I think there is a strong case here for a value for money proposition on this, if one takes into account the benefits for public health, early warning, climate impacts, etc. But knowing that the National Treasury has tightened the purse strings in the last couple of years, I would encourage the department and source to look for as much outside funding or independent or private funding as they can. And I want to know if they've considered private sector funding of this, especially also public funding from abroad. And there's been a lot of investment from the likes of France and Germany and China and others in our energy grid, in our climate responses. And I wonder if that is an option that has been seriously looked at by the department as a potential funding for this project, which I think is an excellent one. Then, Chair, I just note that the municipal responsibilities for air quality monitoring have not been overtaken by this project, which I think is a good thing. I think there's a legal argument that municipalities should retain some responsibility for this. Is that something that, as a future phase of this project, perhaps would be looked at as an extension of this taking over by SAWS of this responsibility nationally, or at least identifying municipalities where that responsibility is not being carried out effectively and going into agreements with those municipalities to take over functions in those. I'm a big believer that we should devolve down to the most capable level of government, and in some cases that is at municipal level, but at others it may be at provincial or will need to stay at national. So I'd like just to comment on the role that municipalities are still going to play under this new arrangement that's been pitched to us today. And then, of course, not forgetting the private sector, who have a significant number of air quality monitoring stations and weather stations nationally. And then lastly, Chair, I want to finish and just applaud the low-cost sensor rollout. I think this is a very sensible option. I understand the data quality needs, and those must be taken care of. And I'm glad that there are engagements with the South African Bureau of Standards and others around agreeing guidelines on this and minimum standards. I am a scientist, so I understand the effects that this has on, for example, modeling and forecasting. But that being said, I think low-cost sensors give us an incredible opportunity to broaden our network, to become more representative of different areas of South Africa that are missing. That map was quite telling of the coverage around densely populated areas, but others that are not so densely populated or feel quite left out of that. So I do want to applaud that and just ask one question around that of whether they've considered a private sector approach to this as well. If it's a low-cost monitor, it might be, or low-cost sensor, excuse me, it may be something that private individuals, businesses, and others might like to take on as a pet project as part of their corporate social responsibility towards their communities, and could be a very effective way to very quickly broaden that network. Obviously, making sure that the right agreements are in place for data sharing and maintenance and access and all the rest. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable de Block. Honorable Makas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and greetings to the DMs in the platform and honorable members, together with officials that are on the platform as well. I welcome your opening remarks that you did at the beginning of the meeting, and also welcome the presentation that has been done by the official in the meeting. My question, Chair, on the presentation is what protocols will ensure seamless and accurate integration of data from diverse monitoring sources, given the current reporting challenges? Does a source have a capacity, personnel, infrastructure, or system-wise to manage the proposed significant expansion of monitoring stations? And what are the technical barriers to low-cost sensor interoperability, and what is the timeline or resource plan to resolve them? What strategies will retain highly skilled individuals trained in air quality monitoring within South Africa? And how will the department ensure consistent maintenance given annual operation cost
of approximately 270,000 per station and is so adequately capacitated financially and technically to scale from managing 17 stations to 60 plus under the phased approach? And how will human resource constraints, especially the need for specialized scientists, be addressed? Why are many low-cost sensors not reporting to SAAQIS? And by when will full integration be achieved? And lastly, what are the steps that are being taken to ensure that data accuracy and reliability from low-cost sensors? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Makasi. Honorable Peters.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to everyone on the platform. Chair, I had a few questions for National Treasury as well, so I do concur with MP de Block on the fact that they are unfortunately not here to answer on those questions. And then I will continue with what specific governance arrangement will regulate the relationship between DFFE source municipalities and provinces after the transfer? And how will local government access and utilize monitoring data for enforcement and planning purposes? Thank you, Chair. My other questions were addressed by the other MPs. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Peters. Honorable Manada.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair, for the opportunity. I will make sure that I don't repeat the questions that are already asked by other members. Honorable Chairperson, poor air quality poses serious risk to public health. Long-term exposure to polluted air can cause or worsen diseases like respiratory diseases like your asthma, the chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases. It also increases the risk of heart disease, the stroke, lung cancer, and this lead to more frequent hospital admission, impair lung development in children, contribute to pregnancy complications such as low birth weight, the premature birth, increased mortality rates among vulnerable groups, including children, older persons, and individuals with existing health conditions. Honorable Chair, in the light of all these risks, Section 24, subsection A of the Constitutions of the Republic of South Africa guarantees everyone the right to environment that is not harmful to their health or our well-being. So this places a duty on the state to take reasonable measures to prevent pollution and protect communities from the harmful effects of poor air quality. I would like to understand, Chair, the transition. How will it assist the people from Highveld priority area, your Mpumalanga and Gauteng, as mentioned by Dr. Gwaze, Fall Triangle area, the Waterberg Bujanala priority area, and how will this transition improve in case it's approved? How will it improve the outcomes of air quality monitoring in those areas and also other areas? And also looking at these significant challenges posed by aging infrastructure, inadequate technical capacity, vandalism, theft, as you have outlined them, Sitlalo, in your opening remarks, as listed also by the minister. The government still has the responsibility to make sure that the air that people are breathing is of high quality. Coming to the issues of low cost sensors, the funding, in case the funding is not secured, will this mean that these communities that are in those areas will continue to remain vulnerable without any help? And the other thing, it is one thing, Chairperson, to initiate a program and another thing to maintain. There are stations, as we're speaking, that are failing to give us reliable data as we speak. So in case we get funding on these ones, are we going to, is the department, or is the source going to maintain those equipments? They talked about the calibration, which I understand is not done. It's not done daily, but I think on annual basis they will still need to calibrate their machines to make sure that they keep them going. So are they going to maintain those stations? Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Managa. Honorable Beach.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you as well. I echo the sentiments. Thank you for the excellent presentation, and we're quite excited to see that there are some interesting technological developments that are happening in this space. Chair, I've been broadly covered specifically by Honourable De Block and by Honourable Peters, but I would like to just put a finer point on two aspects that Honourable Peters specifically raised. I want to find out what intergovernmental networks have been established that specifically looks at the punitive response to air quality infractions that have been taken by individuals, whether they may be state organizations or the private sector. And what prosecutions have subsequently occurred? Could we get an indication of where these prosecutions have actually happened? And then finally, the South African Weather Service often acts as a service level agent for various government entities. Could SAWS give us an indication of which government entities SAWS currently acts as a service level agent, specifically for air quality monitoring? And what is the level of revenue that is currently generated from these agreements? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Peach. Honorable Peters, I believe that this is a legacy hand. Can you kindly?
Yes, it is. Apologies, Chair.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ma'am. From my side, DG and Dr. Kwase. No, Dr. Kwase, sorry for that. I have few questions, I think one or two. I am covered by honorable members on some of the questions. But in your presentation, Doctor, you have highlighted severe operational challenges, including infrastructure recapitalization, also theft and vandalism. While shifting stations to South African police services sites is being explored within the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, how will South African Weather Services manage security, electricity, and maintenance for stations that cannot be relocated? And also, since each station requires, you have mentioned 270,000 annually for operations and up to 900,000 annually for equipment replacement, does SAWS currently possesses the technical personnel and the regional laboratory infrastructure to prevent these newly acquired stations from being non-operational? Or how will this be prevented? The other one, the department previously reported that only 23 out of 205 local municipalities across the country have designated air quality officers, and that numerous districts, municipalities, and local municipalities and provinces completely lack air quality management plans. What then is the targeted support or enforcement mechanisms will be put in place to compel non-compliant municipalities? I think this question also came, I'm not sure whether it was Honorable Kumar. How will you compel non-compliant from municipalities to fulfill these basic legislative requirements under the Air Quality Act, ensuring that they can effectively utilize the data generated by the additional stations or sensors that SOurce will be managing? The, the last one from my side, under the National Environmental Management Air Quality Act, the legal responsibility for air quality monitoring sits primarily with municipal and provincial government levels. As SOurce takes over 60 strategic stations across the 9 provinces through a 3-phase approach, what governance framework or memorandum of agreement will be used to ensure accountability among SOurce, the FFE, and local municipalities? And how will the committee ensure that this centralization does not dilute that constitutional and legislative mandates of local government to monitor and manage air quality within their jurisdiction? Those were the few questions from my side. DG and Dr. Kwaze and the team, can you then respond to the questions that were raised by the members? I'll start with you, DG.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the members for the questions that they have raised. Chairperson, I am also going to request that the acting CE comes in relation to some of the questions that are posed, which SOurce can be in a position to respond to. And Dr. Kwaze will also be responding to the questions. On my side, Chair, the questions that were raised by Honorable Mkhize in terms of the issues around the funding that must back up this initiative. And indeed, we have costed, we've put together a business plan. And this business plan, we had to develop it following engagements with National Treasury, where they indicated that indeed there are fiscal constraints. However, we need to put together a case to motivate for these additional resources. So we have done that. It is in its final stages. And we are hoping, given that we have been engaging with National Treasury, they do meet their commitment to fund the requirements. Of course, they may not necessarily fund the whole amount of almost over 600 million, but the commitment from their side, once the business case is properly motivated, it will then be attended to. So we have belief, Honorable Chair and Honorable Mkhize, that National Treasury will assess, but we are not necessarily as a department going to rely on the business case that will be submitted to National Treasury. As already highlighted in the presentation, we are looking at alternative sources of funding. And that is the contingent plan that we are putting together to say not only look at the fiscus, let's also diversify and approach other donors and also partners who can then come and be in a position to partner in these initiatives to have our stations operational and also ensuring that we have the data that is expected to be collected. Chair, unfortunately, National Treasury could not attend, but they have also indicated that with the business case, it will also enable the review of the funding of the entity itself, source, so that at the end of the day, in as much as we have projected the funding for 10 years, we need to ensure that within the baseline and the allocation of source, resources are made available. And I think one of the members, I did not, honorable members raised the issue of how do we then, beyond the 10 years, how then do we ensure that there's proper funding and resourcing for these initiatives at source level? Chair, the other aspect is around Honorable Bilankulu, and I think the rest of the other questions, I think Dr. Gwaza will respond. Which I also wanted to also respond to is the hidden costs. Hidden costs in terms of the initiatives. The hidden costs, as a department, we believe that some of the hidden costs, it's mainly around the support of ensuring that we have properly skilled individuals, and that will be mainstream in our departmental bursary policy, and also look into how then do we also assess in as far as the allocation that we fund SOARS on, because SOARS operations are funded through the department, and see to what extent can we then augment that and mainstream to ensure that any hidden costs, especially around capacity, the human resource requirements, we then have adequately catered for that. I think the question of what will happen if then the funding is not secured, we are looking at alternative, but National Treasury, having engaged with them, they have committed to come on board in as far as this initiative is concerned. Issues of IGR, and I think a number of honorable members have raised the issues. We do have an intergovernmental forums where we meet as DFFE. SOARS is also represented, provinces are represented, and municipalities. And such an initiative and all the issues in relation to air quality and the concurrent function and mandate that we have as different spheres of government are actually discussed. And that structure is the structure that we will continuously utilize. And we do have the enforcement branch within the department that will also then share with the committee on how are we going to ensure that the different participants and also stakeholders, mainly local government, being able to comply to the laws, but also comply to ensuring that they are managing the stations and whatever contraventions that are there, then they are then consequences in as far as the different stakeholders, especially at a local government level. We do have an official in the meeting that will respond to the issues of enforcement. Chair, I am then going to request that Dr. Gwaze respond in relation to all the questions that would have been raised, also assisted by Grant Walters on enforcement. And then we will also request that you allow the acting CE from source to then respond to the issues that have been raised affecting the entity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG. Over to you, Dr. Gwaze.
Thank you, Chair. The questions that have been raised by the different members can be summarized into 3 types of questions, if you allow me. In terms of the low-cost census, the questions are around the rollout and credibility of data, the timeframes for the rollout, as well as bringing the information to the South African Air Quality Information System, the usage of data, and how citizens can drive information and get access to information and transparency. In terms of the low-cost census, the low-cost census are designed by different companies. And so each center comes with its own technology to link to the South African Air Quality Information System. So with the census that we have finalized the development of the protocols for the circuits to talk to those sensors. It's a piece of work that we do with our developer to link the sensor, because when the sensor come to us, it's literally a closed system. We acknowledge that it could be taking us a little bit of time because of the developments that are required, but we have a commitment in the next financial year to make sure that as many of the sensors as possible are brought into the system so that we can make use of the data on the South African Air Quality Information System. In terms of the data usage and access of data, once we bring the sensors to the South African Air Quality Information System, everyone can have access from the public user interface. We are also enhancing our circuits so that you are able to see the difference between what is coming from the traditional monitoring versus what is coming from the low-cost sensors, because the data qualities are not the same. There was a question on how do we bring in communities and the citizens. The low-cost sensors are an important tool for us to raise public awareness on air quality, on state of air quality, and bringing in particularly the schools to understand where the data comes from and how we make use of the data. So in most of the locations where we are choosing to place the low-cost sensors, we are also choosing schools and other community centers, so that communities, when we are launching the sensors, communities do have access to the information. When we bring them to school children, the school children actually do play with the sensors and look at the information that is generated, and it generates an educational tool beyond just reporting the state of air. So it's a drive that we are pushing, and I think provinces such as Northern Cape have launched a sensor last week at a school where they brought in school children to do exactly that. And that is what is driving citizen science, to say how do we transition from these sensors and all this equipment being technical equipment that is used only by government and other researchers. We bring this information to the communities as part of citizen science so that they understand the state of the air quality they are breathing, and they can also make decisions in terms of how do they communicate and how do they engage on matters of policies and improvements in air quality. It's also improving our ability to raise awareness within the communities. With the question around the credibility of the sensors, this is an important element. What we do with these sensors is when we procure them, we place some of the sensors at our reference station. The purpose of doing that is to say, if our reference station is our given yardstick, when we place a sensors there, we must be able to compare the two. We call it co-location. So we compare our sensors with the reference monitoring, and we generate that information as part of our evidence. And the sensors that we have commissioned from the donor recently, we had to do that because we need to build the confidence with the communities on how effective these sensors are in providing this information. We just completed that work with the service provider that was was brought into this work, and we'll be communicating that information with the public. Up and above that, as I've indicated, the Weather Service is building the laboratory to continuously have those sensors at Irene as a standard place where all sensors that we are commissioning within the network, at least one sensor is placed at Irene, so that we can have that confidence to assess how these sensors work and how they degenerate over time, because they're not like reference monitoring. They have to be replaced. The sensors have to be replaced over time when they do degenerate. The other questions that were raised, Chair, around the Weather Service, the DG has answers those questions in terms of the capacity of the Weather Service. This initiative requires that we build the necessary capacity at the Weather Service. And as has been indicated, we will need to look at multiple approaches, engaging with the university, building the capacity from the graduate school programs where possible, so that we build the capacity at the entity to undertake this work. The issue that has been raised around the legality of this work and what are the interventions that we need to put in place. We need to look at our legislation and understand how are we going to ensure that the Weather Service will sit with the sensor, with the equipment that was procured by local government. Can we have a transfer mechanism of the sensors of the equipment to the Weather Service? And if so, what are the legislative tools that we can use? Each municipality is choosing a different approach. And those engagements, once we start the process of rolling out the different phases, we'll engage with the different network owners so that we work within the provisions that is acceptable within their organization, to ensure that when the Weather Service sits with this equipment, they also have the ability to have insurance processes put in place to manage these sensors, understanding that these sensors are now ultimately their accountability. So there is a bit of work for us to do with the current network owners, and this kind of engagements would depend on the different network owners. And we have initiated those engagements as the sector at an operational level. And what we are going to recommend to our principals is possibly the best approaches for the Weather Service to undertake this work within a legislated framework, because it will be easier that way for a long-term plan. And I think the last question that talks to access for information, when the Weather Service is implementing this work, our standard approach requires that they follow data management protocols. They submit information to the necessary stakeholders. So the local government has access to that information and they receive the reports on a monthly basis. So, for example, if it's City of Tshwane gets a monthly report on the quality of air, which is the important tool that they need for their decision making, and that is generated on an ongoing basis. The Weather Service is already doing that for the three priority areas, where they give us report on the performance of the equipment, on the state of air quality on a monthly basis. And that is a necessary requirement because they are undertaking these services on behalf of government, and that information is what we use to engage with our stakeholders. So the Weather Service becomes an important player to this work. The last question that one of the members asked is, how do we transition? And that is the transition that we have. The Weather Service manages the stations. They provide the information to government. In terms of the priority area, we take that information and we use it for decision making. In terms of understanding our interventions in the three priority areas, are we being effective? Where are we facing challenges? And we go back to our interventions and update our interventions so that we address the challenges of poor air quality that we are observing from the monitoring stations that the Weather Service has. So the infrastructure for the Weather Service provides a yardstick to understand our interventions, as well as to understand additional interventions that needs to be made on an ongoing basis. I think, Chair, I hope I've answered all the questions. In the interest of time, if there are any questions that I may not have answered, I think we'll put that in writing to you. But maybe your questions, one or two of the questions were very specific. What are we doing with air quality management plan development and the designation of air quality officers? Those tools are elements that we track on an ongoing basis to understand where at a provincial level or at a department level, who has an AQMP that is outstanding, air quality management plan. Can we assist you to develop the air quality management plan? And in most cases, authorities, due to the financial constraints, are developing this plan in-house, and the department and province support those interventions, and we work with the municipalities to develop those plans. We have standing members of the team in DFFE that work with municipalities for the development of air quality management plans in-house, as well as taking those air quality management plans for council approval. And we do the same with the designation of air quality officers. However, I have to acknowledge, due to the capacity constraints, we are effectively able to have air quality officers designated provincial, a district, and at metro level. The biggest challenge is at local municipal level, because some of these local municipalities do not even have an air quality structure within their organization. And those are the areas that we need to focus on the most in some of the interventions that we are putting in place. Thank you, Chair. In the interest of time, I've combined the responses from the different honorable members. I hope I've covered all the questions as you have requested.
Thank you, Dr. Kwaze. Let me give to the acting CEO of SOurce, Dr. Mpepia, and check if he can respond to if there's any questions that are left.
Yes, thank you so much, honorable members. Yes, I've picked up some questions that are directed to weather service. The first one dealing with the service level agreement. Yes, we do have a service level agreement with provinces like Mpumalanga, where we're providing and looking after their network of 6 stations. And my understanding is that we had a 3-year contract close to 14 million. And the other services that we're providing also is City of Tshwane. And I think the revenue there is close to 9 million, and the contract is coming to an end in July. Over and above those type of services, we do assist municipalities where that technically sometimes they are running short of space, SIM card and modem, where we'll assist them and maybe even the technical know-how. So those are the sort of support and the service level agreements that we have with specifically those that means province and municipality. Currently, yes, we do have the capacity. Remember, weather service, it's a scientifically run organization and technical. So a lot of those skills, they cross-pollinate, meaning that you will find that maybe somebody who's an engineer or maybe a technician can know how to look after an instrument and also quickly be adaptable to other instrumentation and looking after other instrumentation. So yes, we'll certainly need to invest in the capacity. The current capacity that we have is equal to the work that we have. And if we have to take this work of as presented today, we'll certainly have to invest in the human capital, also even the computing capacity and other things as being presented earlier. There was also a question regarding the security and electricity in case you can't move. I think one has to look at that and weigh against that. For you not to relocate, then you'll have to get a 24-hour security person manning that site. And also currently around electricity, the redundancy that have been put in there is the UBS, and also maybe having to look into the solars and other things, solar panels, just to make sure that there's continuity around that. But that will be very much costly. So that just in response to that question, in case you don't have to relocate, but relocation will always be a preferred option because of the cost related to extra security and other measures. There was also a question around the early warning system. I think in the presentation, what is being presented is that you now have an air quality monitoring network. And coupled to that will then be the modeling aspect. The modeling will try and close the gaps and will also assist us in providing those early warnings like we do for the weather side. So we'll be able to do it for the air quality side. But that capability has to be built over time. And why it has to be a weather service and no other entity besides being given that mandate from the Act itself is that operationally, how we are structured, we're structured in such a way that you use instrument to observe, you calibrate that instrument, and you take the information, you process it, and then you're able to discharge that information. So our operating model will also be used in assisting us in providing the early warning system or the warnings that will be needed for the air quality. But we still have to build the emission inventory, which is critical for one to provide that. We still have to come into the meteorological side of that will be needed for the early warning that we do have. It's not a problem. And the modeling capability and the capacity to do that, because currently we have one person that is doing that. If you look at other countries, you're talking about several people that are doing that, close to 20 people developing those models. And the other thing that I need to mention here is also that we need to develop our own capability, especially as a country that is south of the other countries where there are already models that are developed up north, which might not necessarily be you cannot just transpose them to our environment. So we need to really bring this research component part of that into coming with the early warning and building that system. And I must also say that we already have discussions with the Department of Science and Technology, where we are bringing them on board to say that there's a need for them to assist us in working with the university and funding that. In fact, the DM has written to them and requesting that type of assistance, because we really need to grow the pipeline, the technical know-how, and that interface between weather service and the universities will be critical in growing that critical mass over time. And beyond the 10 years, what I'm seeing personally is that, and that's the trend that you see even across a lot of countries, that having a huge investing in a huge monitoring sites, it's quite costly, and even developed countries they just can't afford that. So you need to bring different things into play. You need to bring the observing network that we currently have, bring the modeling element that helps you to close and even maybe sometimes even substitute some of the monitoring station that you might not need. You also need to bring the satellite measurements. So all these things have to play together in such a way that you begin to close the gaps and slowly reduce the amount of the network that you might need. So that you do it over time, and that will make you sure that you sustain your operation over time. So, and to do that, all what I've just said, there will be a need that weather service work very closely with universities and technology to grow that capability over time, and to begin after 10 years as we move forward to lessen the impact on physicals, because you really need these technologies that are there that other countries are using, and with us we still have to really produce them over time. That brings me to the first question, why it has to be a source-led and not others, because other countries, they will have an agency that they delegate to say, you do this work. But a lot of countries, they use their weather service to be doing what we're presenting to you honorable members. And the other thing why it has to be a weather service led is because from the weather side part of it, we have an organization called World Meteorological Organization, where we come with standards, come with the continuous learning, and also tapping into the network. So this type of things, that's why you find them in a lot of countries that are led by the weather services, and not so much led by agencies. But that's why we're proposing this. And for me, I just want to make sure that I've just stated that in a lot of countries, weather services are leading this, and also the modeling element part of it. I think I've covered almost all the questions. If there's any other thing that I haven't, I'll certainly do it in writing. And yeah, that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mputia. Okay, I do not see any hands for follow-up questions. Okay, then I will check with the two DMs that are on the platform whether if they would like to respond or just say general comments. I will then start with Honorable Swartz, then will be followed by Honorable Singh, then we will close the meeting. Honorable Swartz.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members. Honorable Chairperson, I must say that for us, what is important is that out of the 10-year phased planning, that we would be looking forward in terms of how, as the DG has stated, we do get support from Treasury, but also that we do welcome the comments from the honorable members in that we are also going to look at how we do get partnerships and especially investments into what we are planning to do as a department in relation on working with our entity, which is Source. And that also just to say that, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members, that the rolling out of equipment to the municipalities is taking place and that now in June, we will be handing over equipment in Mpumalanga to the Entlanzeni district, which is our first equipment that will be rolling out this financial year in terms of the census, and that we are working around the clock in terms of getting municipalities to be on board, and that as a department, we are really looking at pushing municipalities, that we do have people in the municipalities who really understand equality, so that we do develop the skills in the municipalities, and that all the other comments that have been made by the committee, that we are taking the advice and oversight and heed that we really need to get our air quality up to standard, and that tomorrow I will be in Middelburg also, where we are having an air quality event, so that especially in the Emalahleni area, where we all know that we have ESCOM and being the biggest culprits, that we are working with those municipalities, that we also bring on board, especially communities. So the portfolio committee will see that as a department, we are trying our best to meet the red flag of the AG, where the AG is always telling us that they see the work we are doing, but they're not really seeing what we are doing in terms of really bringing communities on board in terms of air quality. So I must also say we are working around that. So the portfolio committee will see us going down onto the ground, which would be a similar program like we're doing with the e-waste, where we are actually going to be having a real live community engagements with communities in terms of talking about air quality itself, so that we really teach communities what air quality is. The branch has been doing a lot of work in terms of working with schools, having the competitions, working with teachers. But I think that because we have been red flagged again by the AG in terms of us really taking air quality down to communities, the portfolio committee will see that. But in relation to what we're discussing today, for me, what is important and what the honorable members have raised is us having the meeting as Treasury has requested to come back on the 25th. That is important, so that we are all on the same page, and the portfolio committee has the comfort that what we have presented here today and what we have phased out over the 10 years and what Treasury is going to say would then really give a response to some of the questions in terms of the finances, which are critical in terms of what SOurce and the DFFE has envisaged in terms of us rolling out the much needed equipment and also the skills that are needed for us to be really saying that we are implementing what is supposed to be implemented. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you, DM Swartz. DM Singh.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. DM Swart's colleague has covered it. She has responsibility over this branch. Safe to say, from the side of enforcement and compliance, we will continue with our enforcement and compliance, and we've got our mission targets that have been gazetted. We will make sure that there is compliance, but I also would like to make an appeal that we impress upon the private sector, particularly those industries who are the cause of excessive pollution in our air, to also provide air quality monitoring stations. And I do know of some that have them, which we also monitor, because then that capital cost, infrastructure cost, can be borne by those industries themselves, whether it's Eskom, SAPI, or petrol refinery plants, or whatever it is. We need to impress upon the private sector that they have a role as well. And it's not only government that should be monitoring what wrong they are doing. So thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and colleagues.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. Honorable members, before we close the meeting, I think from the side of the committee, when the department appears for quarterly briefings, we will need a progress or an update on progress made with the National Treasury and external partnership, and also the matter relating to municipal capacity to develop a quality management plans and appointment of a quality officers. I believe that it needs an urgent attention. So, honorable members and colleagues, that's it for today. Let me then take this opportunity and thank the minister in his absentia, the two deputy ministers, the Minister Swartz and Deputy Minister Singh, also the team that is led by DG Chabalala, the FFA team, also the team from SOurce that is led by the board chairperson, Ms. Daya, and all those who have attended our meeting, and also our portfolio committee members who have participated, and our A team that is always supporting our committee. Let me take this opportunity and thank all of you and the inputs that were made in this meeting of today. With that, honorable members and colleagues, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair and members.
Sharp here.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, maybe that's.
Bye, chairs. Bye, members. Bye. Hayi, ndo khansela wo fhela ndi na muṅwe futhi wa 2.